Hey Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
what do you call it when your sister sends you a message midweek letting you know that you have to switch the game for this next episode of the podcast?
I don't know. What do you call it?
Psycho. Oh wait, no, backwards, wrong way. Brutal. Psycho. Not.
Do you want to do that again?
Nope, we're just gonna keep it.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
It was not worth re-recording that joke.
Yeah. It wasn't. You're right.
Well, listeners, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, your brutally legendary host, Madelyn.
I'm your dumb host, Emma.
And thanks for putting the show into your ears this fine day. So as you may have picked up, despite the fact that I feel like I did successfully remember that Psychonauts was the old game several times in several episodes. I guess just one episode, but several times throughout my week. We are not doing Psychonauts as promised.
Yes. So something that's been on my to-do list for a while that I just haven't gotten around to is going through all of our episodes and, like, making a list of games that we've already done. And then possibly also going the next step of, like, noting down significant games for each relevant year so that it's easier to fill the list in instead of me just Googling games made in 2005 randomly. But I have not done that, and unfortunately that has finally come back to punch us in the nose, because we have actually done an episode on Psychonauts. It's old enough that we don't have a blog entry for it on our website, so it's like in the teens somewhere. But we have talked about it before. So in that spirit, like, I think it's fine to come back to games eventually when, like, there's they can be in the other category or something like that. But I don't want to just do, like, a straight another episode on a game that we've already talked about.
I don't know. I feel like I need an upgraded remaster on some of these games. Like, I'd like a do-over on some of the games that I did in, like, the first year of the podcast. Where...
Well, maybe, I think that when we do that, we should, like, talk about it, and maybe it should be, like, you know, like a special thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But since we have already done Psychonauts, but I wanted to keep it, you know, similar, right? Like, so that people looking forward to Psychonauts could be like, oh yeah, I see that, that's fine. So instead of talking about Psychonauts, we're going to be talking about Brütal Legend for our old game. Which is another game by Double Fine that came out just a little bit after Psychonauts.
It was their game right after Psychonauts. Also their game that they thought, we're Double Fine, we love to make a very different game each time. So if you were excited about anything about Psychonauts other than the fact that it was made by Double Fine, sorry.
I mean,
that's
all
totally
Double
true.
Fine's games have a similar, like, art style
No.
and sense of personality and all that sort of stuff.
I
So
hear you.
I don't think that's quite true.
I was just reading in the context of their development of this game that they tried to make something totally different. And obviously they have a style. But if you are excited for any other musical genre, our apologies. Also, new game is still Haven. Although
Yes.
in my mind, Haven was a different game than what it was.
What game was it?
I don't know exactly what I'm thinking of, but there must be some kind of semi-recent release shooter type game with a name that is similarly kind of celestial as Haven. I don't know what I'm thinking of.
I don't know what you're thinking of either. That's so vague, to be honest.
Well, the name Haven just... Maybe I'm like, what I'm thinking of is Halo, but I'm not thinking of Halo. That would be really dumb. Like, obviously I didn't think it was Halo. But something with the name Haven made me think, grody, like a $60 stupid shooter with multiplayer microtransaction elements, which of course is just absolutely not what that game is. So stay tuned for what Haven is, but spoiler, if you were like me and you were like, oh, Haven, that sounds like a generic, like, first-person shooter game. It is not. Find out in about 20 minutes. Introducing suspense elements into the podcast.
Yeah.
Entirely, in fact. We're like, different game than we told you. Find out what the game is actually about in 20 minutes. It's a bold opening this week.
I'll accelerate make this database of games on my to-do list so that it gets done, and hopefully won't have to face this problem again. But for now, Brütal Legend. It came out in 2009, October, for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Created by Double Fine and published by Electronic Arts, although it was originally supposed to be published by Vivendi Games, that then merged with Activision, and Activision was like, actually, we don't want this game.
Yeah, they were like, oh, this is behind schedule and over budget, and one of the quotes was like, this doesn't look like a good game. That's not a direct quote, but that was part of the rationale. Yeah. So they were like, oh, we don't want this. There were also some reports that they tried to turn it, and listeners who aren't familiar with the game, this will make sense momentarily, that they tried to turn it into a Guitar Hero sequel. Which is just like...
Interesting.
What? Your critique is that the game is behind schedule and over budget, and you're like, oh, this is a game that has music and guitars. Maybe it should be Guitar Hero.
Change the entire game. Would that help you get back on schedule and in budget? There was some legal stuff, but it was all settled out of court, and EA picked up the game to publish. It's a heavy metal action-adventure game with real-time strategy elements, starring Jack Black.
Do you know that Tumblr post about Jack Black? That one Tumblr post where it's like, I could be on a spaceship beamed up by aliens, and like Jack Black would walk by eating a bag of potato chips, and I'd just be like, huh, classic Jack Black. Jack Black's the only human who doesn't ever need any context from me. I think this is the dumbest, like, meme post I've ever seen, but it has buried itself in my brain, and every time I see Jack Black, I think, Jack Black doesn't need any context from me. So yeah, Jack Black, why not? Sure. He makes a lot of sense for this game, honestly. Like, in this game, he's perfectly in context.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I had something interesting to say, but then Jack Black took over all of my brain cells. And now it's
There were also a lot of other recognizable names. Yeah.
Personalities.
Yes. In this game. So, a lot of celebrity voice actors in this one.
Which was not the idea at first, apparently. So, the story is that, like... Well, first of all, this game came out of Tim Schafer, like, being a metal fan, but also, he says, I was, like, on the bus while we were making Monkey Island. In 1990, mind you. It's, like, fully 20 years earlier. And he was like, what would be, like, the coolest possible fantasy name that would, like, outcool every other fantasy name? And, like, what would that be? And then he thought of Brütal Legend, and he kept that in his back pocket for 15 years. And was like, hey, what are we gonna make after Psychonauts? This guy. Also inspired... There's so many, like, things that I'm like, how is this... Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. I remembered it. I feel like a lot of the new games we've been talking about lately have felt like, oh, this is a Talk This mashup, right? And I've been like, game development is catching on to the idea that you had in 2017. 2016, really. But Brütal Legend does feel like this is, like, the dumbest thing that the Talk This sisters could have ever come up with. We're like, how do we get real-time strategy in there? Boss fights. Heavy metal. Jack Black is there.
Jack Black is there. The key to all of our successful mashups.
I don't know why we haven't put Jack Black into more of our mashups, honestly.
He's just there in the background eating chips, you know?
No context. He doesn't need any context. Oh, man. But yeah, originally they were not thinking they would have a celebrity cast because, of course, like, Psychonauts had not done super well. And this game didn't have a publisher for a while, right? Like, they found out they were getting dropped by their publisher when they weren't in the press release. So, understandably, they weren't like, yes, this is going to be a big celebrity game from the beginning. But even though they designed the main character to kind of look like Jack Black, they hadn't been, like, it wasn't like Jack Black was tied to the game. But they found out that Jack Black did like Psychonauts, and then is a gamer and a metal fan, and was pumped about the game. And then, like, once Jack Black was involved, everyone else was like, oh, Jack Black's in it? Okay.
I guess all you really need is one name, and then suddenly it's legitimate, right?
Yeah,
So.
Definitely. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely true. Like, if you can convince one person that it's decent. I don't know why people would trust Jack Black's opinion. No offense, Jack. But...
He's, nobody hates Jack Black.
I guess that's true.
So far as I'm aware. That's my impression.
Somebody does.
Everybody either likes Jack Black or is mostly indifferent to Jack Black, so it's a bit of a safe choice, you know?
So, the game, in terms of what it's actually about, if we haven't sold you already with all this Jack Black talk, is about Eddie Riggs, who's a roadie for a band called Cabbage Boy. Cabbage with a K. It's gotta be a little funky heavy metal band. And so during a gig, he gets crushed by, like, falling equipment or something as he's trying to save another band member. And so in getting crushed, there's blood. And the blood falls on his belt buckle, which is really an amulet to Ormagudin, which is, like, the dark god of this alternate world inspired by heavy metal album covers, which is dope, by the way. If anybody is out there who is real and follows Clickbait Boyfriend on social media, where he posts his heavy metal to his stories on Instagram all the time, you'll get to see some of these covers. And I was like, you know what? That's legit. That's legit to be inspired by those. They are dark and intricate sometimes. Anyway, when the blood falls on the amulet, of course, Jack Black, aka Eddie, is transformed into this, like, dark god. And the stage is transformed into a dark god. The dark god appears and, like, takes Eddie to this alternate heavy metal world where he has to kill the demon overlord with his assistant fake David Bowie and like, save the humans. And Ozzy Osbourne is there too.
Yeah, he's also there. So yeah, when I was looking into this, like, I knew heavy metal, Jack Black, guitar fighting.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And so I was watching, like, a retrospective, and, like, they said, like, and when it came out, everybody was kind of surprised that there was, like, these really prevalent real-time strategy systems. And I was like, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Like, I'm aware I haven't played this, but I thought, like, I had, like, the cultural knowledge of it, right? You know, I was with it. I was aware of this game. But I did not know it had real-time strategy elements whatsoever. I was just under the impression it was just an action game where you hit people with your guitars and use your guitar power. But no, as you get further into the game, the most prevalent form of content,
combat
content is real-time strategy, where you're on the field and you're attacking things, but you also have, like, groups of people that you're commanding to go to different places on the map to capture different areas as well, while all the action is going on.
Which is really what made this to me feel like a Talk This mashup. I was like, where did that come from? Literally nowhere.
I you know, like, in isolation, I think it makes sense, like, thematically, right? Like, he's a roadie, so he's, like, commanding the people to, like, set up the concert.
Okay.
You know, like, all the cooperative effort that goes into, like, making a performance, and stuff like that. So, like, I see the idea there, right? But it does seem to have been slightly underwhelming in execution seemed to be the prevalent opinion that I found on it.
Real-time strategy is a tricky one to land, I think.
Well, it involves a lot. I think real-time strategy as a genre just requires a lot of tutorializing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Tutorials in heavy metal seem to be a little... I mean, I'm sure there's tutorials about heavy metal. Like, it's very important that you scream healthily, right?
Yeah.
But they don't seem like... You don't think about, like, heavy metal and, like, you know, reading...
Lots of menus. I mean, they had Jack Black do some live action elements for, like, the menu or something. They really should have just done, like, here's a YouTube video with Jack Black and Tenacious D, like, explaining how this battle system works. They should have done a song. They should have done a tutorial metal song.
That might be a little annoying to review, you know?
Not if it's a good song.
You come back after a few weeks, you're like, man, how do I play this again? I just want to learn this one part, and it shows you that one verse of the song. You have to listen to the whole thing.
If that song was good, though, you wouldn't forget. You'd be like, ah, yes, I love that song. Press X to thrash.
You'd have to make 2 versions, too, though, since the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 controllers are different.
2 verses. Yeah, it does. I saw some stuff that were like, well, we really thought about the kind of open world stuff in some ways as being training for the real-time strategy, but that doesn't seem to me like that could be truly effective. That would be pretty cool if you could do that, if you could figure out a way to train people through the action adventure part to do the real-time strategy, but it definitely doesn't seem like these, at least in the eyes of many reviewers, gelled in a way that was successful. And understandably, you're right. It's a little bit, well, it totally makes sense with our main character as a roadie. No one is coming into this for roadie simulator. They're coming in this for, like, let me make Jack Black do dumb things with some soundtrack.
Yeah. I think part of the issue, too, is it does start, like, the first few hours are very much just the action-adventure stuff, where you're just fighting things. And then those get introduced a little further into the game, and then they just stick around. So if you're, like, in the first couple hours, like, this is awesome! And then they're like, real-time strategy! And you're like, this is less awesome!
Well, they super downplayed it in the marketing, too, because they were afraid, you know, real-time strategy doesn't sell. So, surprise, surprise! Here's what you actually bought.
Yeah. Apparently, Brütal Legend did sell well for a Double Fine game.
Right.
It did not sell well for an EA game. Seems to be the distinction.
They thought that they were okayed for a sequel and started it. And then EA was like, what are you doing? And apparently it was like a rough time for Double Fine, because they were like, oh, we spent some money on this. And EA was like, huh?
Yeah. Yes, it definitely... And it also seems to have been one that's a little less, like, of Double Fine's games, is a little less, like, culturally remembered, too. It's certainly not as... It's probably not as recognizable as Psychonauts, I would say, at the very least.
It's tough when you make these kinds of celebrity games. I think it gets kind of... I mean, you know, there's so many different things you could think of Jack Black for that are kind of music and, like, cheesy in a positive way related, right? You might think of Tenacious D, you might think of School of Rock, you might think of Brütal Legend, but the first 2 are definitely more widely popular. So it's just gets eaten up, I think, by other people's kind of cultural spheres, almost. Also, it's a little more niche. The heavy metal game. Speaking of the heavy metal game, like I said, I live with a certified heavy metal aficionado, namely Clickbait Boyfriend. And Brütal Legend, in addition to having a bunch of original music, also has like 100 licensed tracks. Which, to me, was also like, wow, you would never make this now. I was like, this is a cool idea, like a game that is so heavily based on a particular genre of music. Wouldn't it be cool if more people did that? But, like, absolutely not. That'd be impossible.
Yeah, I'm kind of still surprised it's still, like listed everywhere. Considering, like, there've been games that, like, Alan Wake had to be, like, delisted for a while, I think, because their licenses expired on the music they were using.
There's some heavy anti-capitalist, parts of the metal community. So maybe that's
true. I was gonna say maybe heavy metalists don't care as much as, like, yeah, put our song in a cool game. Why not?
They're like, Jack Black's in it.
Jack Black's in it.
So I showed CBB the list just to see, is this real metal or is it like fake metal, right? Mm-hmm. And so here are his comments. We're doing this Clickbait Boyfriend style. I wrote down a quote. Here it is.
Okay.
Not my kind of metal, but most of the choices make sense. I'm surprised. It must have been a licensing thing. No Iron Maiden or Metallica? I'm just thinking of the big classics. They had no Rain and Blood, no Master of Puppets. I was impressed with some of the more niche picks, but there was nothing truly brutal, truly heavy. The closest they got was In Flame, kind of wimpy melodic death metal. No deathcore, notably no deathcore, despite this being released in 2009. Where's Suicide Silence? Where's All Shall Perish? Where's Whitechapel? They all had great albums by then. Throw me a bone here. He then went on to say, they should have had more old school from the 90s, and more true second wave, first wave black metal from cassette tapes, super lo-fi, lots of hiss, lots of talk of burning churches. Less Kiss. Kiss is a joke. End review.
I followed 10% of that.
Overall, I think he was impressed that there were some legit picks there, but he would have liked more of his Norwegian death symphonic core in there.
Yeah. I'm sure Metallica was probably, like, the licensing thing.
Yeah, you can give us $1 billion.
Yeah.
We hate Jack Black.
The few people who hate Jack Black, all in Metallica.
The biggest missed opportunity with this game is that they did apparently, I mean, maybe this was part of trying to make it a Guitar Hero sequel, right? But I don't think so. They did apparently consider, for a time, utilizing the Guitar Hero controllers. Which is of itself kind of funny, because it's like, yeah, 2009, you probably actually really could have utilized a Guitar Hero controller in a non-Guitar Hero game, and people would have had it.
Yeah.
You, like, absolutely could not do that now. Right, you couldn't be like, we're going to use the guitar controller. Everyone would be like, the guitar controller that's in my mom's basement maybe from 2009?
Yeah.
But I do think they decided not to do it because it was, like, clunky, apparently, switching back and forth between holding the controller and using the guitar. But man, kind of a missed opportunity during this very limited window where you really could have done a dual controller game in a way that I wish would have been dope. It would have been dope to see those guitar controllers. It's always funny when people are like, I speed run this game with my Guitar Hero controller. Like, those are funny, but it would have been cool to see them worked into something that wasn't Guitar Hero or Rock Band in a way that made kind of diegetic sense. And this would have been a natural fit. But so it goes. That's what I would have done in the mashup. I'd have been like, you use the Guitar Hero controller.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's almost sold me on wanting to play the game, except that the gameplay doesn't seem to be well reviewed.
It didn't seem like it got bad reviews, just, like, not glowing either.
I'm not good at real-time strategy, though. I guess that's not totally true. I love Age of Mythology, right? That's real-time strategy, sort of. But
yeah, it is.
My latest experience was Clan Creator in Yakuza Kiwami 2, which I did complete all of, but was not very good at, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I know it's coming back in my next one, but we'll see. There was no strategy to it. It was just like, people everywhere! And I'm sure that's how I would play this game too. So, are we ready to talk about Haven?
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, there has been some talk about the possibility of a Brütal Legend 2. They had Jack Black come do a song for Psychonauts 2. Whenever that comes out, they've talked about maybe doing Brütal Legend 2 next. And they've got the big Xbox money now, so.
That's true. It's hard to imagine. I mean, they've been working on Psychonauts 2 for forever, right?
I mean, for like 5 years since they did their Kickstarter for it.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I just mean, don't they want to make something new?
I don't know. Just saying they've said about it. So, Brütal Legend fans, don't give up all your hope.
Hashtag Brütal Legends. And it'll just be Jack Black with a whoopee cushion.
I hope they call it that, like TU with the little colon above it.
Umlaut.
TUL. TAL Legend. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I did not understand what you were doing. I thought you were just doing the beginning of the word several times there for a moment. I was like, not
No, I just misspelled the end of brutal.
Yes, I understand now.
I said at the beginning, I'm your dumb host, Emma. So, just living up to the moniker.
Well, Brütal Legend 2 coming to the Talk This New Game pile.
Someday.
Maybe it'll be far enough away that we'll have forgotten that we've already talked about Brütal Legend.
Hopefully.
So that brings us to Haven, which, as previously discussed, is not some kind of generic, shooter type game, as it was in my brain when Emma pulled it from the hat. But is instead a third person kind of RPG, they say with survival elements, game. I
guess you have to eat. I was like, what are the survival elements?
I guess you have to eat.
There's like a hunger meter. You collect materials to repair your ship, I guess. I guess those are survival elements.
She complains about being hungry sometimes. Anyway, it's from French studio The Game Bakers. Which I thought was kind of a funny studio title that, if they were to get big, will definitely change. You know what I mean? This will definitely
not.
Just GB Games, if they were to get big.
Gotta hit those memes,
That's true. Which kinds of memes? I guess it's kind of cross-cutting memes, right? Mm-hmm. Both the Bake Off and 420 communities.
Yep.
Anyway, Haven came out, I think near the end of 2020, because I remember reading about it at the time. Basically for, all platforms available at the end of 2020. So, both PlayStations, I imagine all of the Xboxes, but it's on Xbox Game Pass. Switch, all over the place. You can play Haven.
Yep. It's on all current systems except Mac.
You can't call a Mac a current system. Come on. Let's not kid ourselves that how old is my Mac now? My 4-year-old computer is a current system. Let's not joke. But in Haven, you play as U and K, who are a couple who have escaped their home world of the apiary to this new uninhabited planet called Source on their ship called the Nest. Which, look, no real points for naming in this game. Gonna be honest. It's fine. It's nothing I'm gonna laugh at it, but no real points for originality there.
I think the Nest is cute.
The Nest is cute, yes.
That sounds like something 20-year-old, couple in a relationship would name their ship that they live in.
That's true. Okay, I'll give them that. I'm not saying any of it is bad. I'm just saying Will I
Yeah,
remember?
no,
any
I
of
see.
these
I know
names?
what you're saying. I'm just saying I like the nest. I think that's a cute name.
Yes. Haven gets Tonka's bonus points for having local co-op.
It's very designed for playing in co-op as well. Like, you can play it by yourself, but part of the appeal is, like, playing it with your significant other has been how they've marketed it, at least.
I don't know how you would play this with anyone but your significant other, to be perfectly honest, though.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting to me, given, like, I'm thinking of this, and what's the divorce game that came out?
It Takes Two.
Yeah. There seems to be, well, there's a couple of things I'm interested in here. Most specifically, there's definitely an interest in these games that are very focused on relationships and are two-player. There are more of them that have come out in the past few months than I've ever heard of before. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting to me, right? As we realize our gamers are getting older and that kind of thing, more of these games about kind of adult relationship type things. It's interesting. So that on the one hand is interesting. In general, I'm interested to see whether, you know, this pandemic time that we've been in will inspire more of these couch co-op designed games. Obviously, big online playtime for video games. That feels like the obvious takeaway. But I do wonder if we'll see more games inspired by people who are stuck at home with their significant other, or stuck at home with their kids, parents, roommates, whatever, coming out over these next couple years, which I would appreciate. Please let that be the lesson. Not more
Haven
online.
was probably not developed with that in mind. It's probably
I recognize that these
saying.
games predate that. I'm not saying these come out of that. I'm just like, oh, good timing that you came out, you know, still during this time that many people are still at least more at home than they were. And interesting to see if more people are inspired by that to make similar games. I don't know what the sales strategy is of, like, this game must be played by couples. I know it's not like they're marketing it that way or anything like that. But unlike something like Overcooked or like, what was the game? We talked about it on the show. I think it's the people that did It Takes Two. It's just the one they did before that with the two brothers.
A Way Out.
A Way Out. So, like, A Way Out, obviously you can play with, like, friend, roommate, anyone that you're close enough with to play games with, right? And
Sure.
Overcooked, for example, you can play with a friend, roommate, anyone that you're comfortable ruining your relationship with. But I can't
I think you could, just to say, I think you could play It Takes Two with someone you're not in a relationship with.
That's
this
true.
Haven's a little different because there is a lot of, like, conversational elements to it, I think. And it's, like, I don't know, it feels more explicitly romantic than It Takes Two, which just has a lot of, like, puzzle gameplay.
It Takes Two looks absolutely unhinged from, like, the little snippets of it I've heard.
I do not love the Book of Love. I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't love him.
Yeah.
Not a fan. I'm sure the game is perfectly fun, but that book creeps me out a lot. Maybe we'll talk about it on some other episode.
Let's make sure that pushes further down the line. Wouldn't it be boring to pick It Takes Two out of the hat for our next episode?
Yeah.
But yeah, Haven in particular feels like very geared as, like, well, it couldn't even be like a good date game, honestly. I think it would be weird to play this with someone who was, like, a new relationship person.
Yeah.
It's a little, I mean, not that it's, like, intense or anything like that, but it does feel a little bit like, I can imagine this is going to get a little too romantic for that. I don't know how the kids date, right? Let's put that out there.
I don't know how those youngins date these days.
I don't think I ever knew how the youngins date.
With their
I was like,
Tinders and their Snapchats.
I was like, oh, Clickbait Boyfriend, you live upstairs. Let's date. And now, like, we just slowly lived closer together
man.
since.
What a good story to tell at parties, you know? How did you meet? Well, lived upstairs, figured.
The story of how we met is, this is not heavy metal, is he was being an absolute tool playing a guitar outside in front of our dorm. There it is, exposed for everyone to know. The first time I met him, I knew his roommate, and he was, like, outside playing guitar outside of our college dorm. That should have been it. That should have been, like, absolutely not. Only Jack Black can do something like that. Could have been Jack Black outside my dorm. Jack Black, this is relevant because the Jack Black is out of context thing is one of those, like, this is a thing that has become a couple thing. And that's what Haven is all about. Haven is all about those, like, little dumb things that, like, when you live with someone, you no longer can talk to other people because, not in an abusive way, just you do not understand how to not use your own language anymore. You have to, like switch out of all of the just reference conversation and into normal conversation. This hasn't happened to me.
No.
At all.
No.
I've seen other people than Josh in the past year and a half.
Yeah. But the gameplay of Haven is basically, like, your ship, the Nest, has gotten damaged after you fled, like, your hometown. And so you have to go around this, like, area that you found yourself in, the source, and gather materials in order to fix your ship so that you can, you know, keep going. But the source is sort of infected by, rust. Yeah?
Yeah.
That you have to, like, clear out by just sort of flying over it. Right?
Yeah.
And the rust also infects the animals and life on the planet, so sometimes you also have to fight those animals to make them non-rusted again, which is used in, like, turn-based real-time combat, real-time turn-based, where you control both U and K, who can either attack separately or together, and have various skills that you're supposed to use on, like, different weak points of the different creatures that you find.
So this was my game that I played for this episode. We only played about the first hour or so far. It's been a busy couple of weeks. But yeah, when I was like, oh, it's a couple game, I was like, CBB and I need a new co-op game. It's been a while since we played anything co-op, so I picked it up. And yeah, it's fun so far. I think it would be boring as a single player game.
Yeah.
Is the vibe that I get. I think it's much more fun when you get to look at each other and be like, ooh, how cute. Or, oh, or really it's more like, Clickbait Boyfriend's like, oh, she's hungry. You can't see the faces I'm making, but it's lots more just like, oh, where have I seen that before? Kind of. He keeps picking the dialogue choices that make the girl, like, very mean to the boy, and I'm like, ugh. But there's a lot of interesting stuff that they're doing with the local co-op that, while I ultimately think my impression of the game is going to be, it was okay. Like, we're gonna keep playing it, I think. But I don't think I'm gonna come away from this being like, wow, what a game. Because it definitely has the vibe of, if you were playing this single player, it's like a visual novel with some kind of silly flying around in between.
They do say, like, up front, like, this is not a game you're playing to be challenged, right?
Yeah, they do. And when they talk about the difficulty at the beginning, they're like, this isn't a hard game, so we recommend that you use standard, but if you'd enjoy it more, take down the difficulty. Which I appreciated. It's definitely the opposite of the, like, baby, sort of normal, like, getting there. Finally, you're a gamer. Difficulty tiers that you see in, like, games. The game that I thought Haven was. So I did appreciate that up front. And that, you know, it's not a knock on it. There's nothing wrong with kind of easy, chill games. Like, the flying around is kind of easy and chill. cleaning up the rust by flying over it, easy and chill. But I think what's most exciting about this game to me is that they've found creative ways to engage player 2. Which is something that I feel like there's been a real trend. And this is a good thing for a different audience, right? But there's been a kind of a trend in couch co-op of, like, it's really a single-player game, but, like, player 2 can be the little fairy and fly around.
Hook up your 4-year-old.
Exactly. It's like
that's fair. That's a fair, co-op strategy.
That's what I'm saying. Not knocking that. It's perfect for all the people that are depicted in dad games, right? Like, it's for the dad game audience. I get it. That's a big gamer thing, and they want to hook people into games early, and what better way than to give the God of War a little fairy to fly around. I recognize that that's not in God of War. I understand that. But that's frustrating for me in a household of 2 adult gamer people, because nobody, like, wants to play the lame player 2. Unless it's a game where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play, but, like, you're really on your phone, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's appealing for that too, but in which point, that's bad. That's bad. Don't do that. But this one has a lot of really creative ways of, it's like switching who is in control and making you work together that I would love to see implemented in games that are perhaps a little bit more interesting to me from a gameplay perspective as well. Like, right now, it's really novel to be like, oh, so like, the way the actual kind of gameplay outside of the conversation works is you're kind of flying around with your hover boots. You kind of glide around these landscapes, and like Emma said, you're picking up items and cleaning this mysterious rust. And so normally what that would be something like, oh, player 2 fell off screen, like, they get ported back. And that does still happen, right? But you can pretty seamlessly shift who is in control, like who is the player 1, basically, leading where you're going, which is cool. That's something that I'd love to see more of these couch co-op games find a way to implement, because with this one, it's like, oh, that's cool. Also, they hold hands when they fly, and they're so close together. Oh. But also that you have to... I mean, this is a little silly, right? Theoretically, you kind of do this anyway I do this anyway if I'm playing a game with someone. But you have to agree on your dialogue options. So when they have them up, both players have to pick the same one.
Interesting.
Which, as much as that's sort of something that people were probably doing anyway, it's neat that, well, you have to steal your partner's controller if you want to rob them of their agency, I guess. So that was kind of a neat thing to have worked in as well. So it definitely makes the 2 players feel a lot more like just player 1 and player 1, rather than somebody being, like, really the secondary player. Which I'd like to see more of. That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Do you care about plot spoilers for this? Because I do think there's one element that we should touch on that it had a little bit of controversy over when it came out.
Is it about their home, like, escaping their home world?
Yeah.
Yeah, I already read about that part, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, the reason that you find out that U and K have fled their homeworld is that, their society has someone called the Matchmaker, that chooses, like, what couples go together. Like, they choose who that you will pair with in your adult life. And K and U were not match made, but wanted to be together, so they fled the planet. And one element that comes in is you eventually sort of get back in contact with one of the, like, sort of a parental figure from their home, who is in a queer relationship, but wants them to come back and assimilate and be forced into their matchmake pairs by basically going through something that sort of sounds like conversion therapy. And it feels a bit like a developer that's like, oh, we want to include lots of different, types of people in our games, and didn't really think about implications of just like putting them wherever, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's just a little tone deaf. And they've talked a bit about maybe wanting to tell more stories in this world. So maybe like they have ideas for that and it will be expanded and, you know, there'll be more different perspectives. But it's not awesome to have like a queer character being like, come back and have the matchmaker force you into a relationship. Yeah. They have apologized for it in the developer way of like, we're sorry for any harm that we caused. We just wanted to, you know, tell the story of like, you know, love whoever you want, you know, everybody's free to love whoever they want. It's a situation that reminds me a little bit of like the whole like fantasy racism problem.
Yeah.
You know? Like, which if you're somehow not familiar with that, it's like you set a story in a world and there's a group of people who are seen as lesser, but it's not because like, you know, because of like straight racism like you would find in the real world. Like, it's not because they're people of color, it's because they're like cat girls or something.
Dark elves.
Yeah. Or even beyond that, like, no, sometimes there won't even be like somehow coded as a different color or a different race of people. They'll just be like, they have monkey tails, so everybody hates them, but like they're all like, you know, light-skinned or whatever. Right. So it's like using like real world like racism dynamics but setting them in a fantasy world and removing, you know, the real world minority elements from them.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does.
So that kind of feels like what's hitting here, and that it's well-intentioned, like they have a good message, but they are using like a straight couple as a way to talk about like not being allowed to love who you want, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway. That's a rather small thing. I think Haven does a lot of cool things with like, I really like the idea of having games that like aren't just co-op, but are designed very specifically for a type of people to play them co-op, even if it's like not very marketable, but experimenting with the types of stories you can tell in games.
It's definitely, it's something that I would be interested to see more of. Yeah, just as someone who, you know, doesn't engage with online multiplayer at all, it's interesting to think about, you know, with local co-op, who are those people playing that and why are they playing it? Because with online, it's like, oh, you're playing with your guild or your biology classmates or whatever. But in local, it's like different games for different situations is interesting.
Yeah.
I first heard about this game like reading about their loading screens. And like the thought process they had put behind those, which was kind of interesting, in that like the loading screens are all these like little like cartoon moments in the couple's life, but apparently they were like, well, so like we have ones of both of them where they're like cooking in kind of like a silly frilly apron for the other one, right? But they were like, if we do that with the woman first, like we don't earn your trust, right? If that comes up as like the second loading screen, you know, it looks like it's just like a kind of exploitative, like you can't tell that she has the agency here, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, so we have like rules for like how our loading screens auto-generate, where it's like you have to have seen the one where he's in the apron before hers comes up.
That's interesting.
So it's interesting, like the little places that they put a lot of thought into how they were treating relationships, and then the places where they were like, no, conversion therapy. But yeah. It does, like, it's cute. It'll be sad when loading screens are totally gone in, like, 3 years, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I hope there are some developers that just, like, force loading screens anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you will get this loading screen, and you will like it, gamer.
Don't we all need a moment to check our texts? I don't know.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So, where's the mashup? Good luck. Heavy metal romance. The Josh and Madelyn story. The end.
It's just your life. That's the mashup.
And it'll be like, oh, you have to pick up your CSA, but Madelyn has this work and this work and this work. Everyone will be like, Josh is kind of a deadbeat. And they'll be like, no, he does philosophy. And everyone's like, the philosophy minigame sucks.
Oh, no.
I'll have to ask him. Going on a big walk today. Like, how would you do a philosophy minigame in a game? I'll report back.
I'd be curious if he has any ideas, you know? Make a little philosophy game?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, strong soundtrack elements. Jack Black, probably.
Jack Black. And co-op of some sort.
Yeah. Brütal Legend has a co-op mode. It's like, you know, PvP, real-time strategy, but doesn't have one.
So you're a heavy metal couple. And,
I have an idea for a game, but it only works if we, like, go back to, like, 2009 when everybody had Rock Band.
That's fine, I think. Go for it.
So I think it's gotta be some kind of RPG type thing that uses the Rock Band controllers. But not just the guitar one, right? There was the mic and there were drums, weren't there?
For Rock Band.
Didn't Rock Band have drum part?
That's what I mean. For Rock Band, you were saying the Guitar Hero controller. I'm pretty sure Guitar Hero...
Sure, Guitar Hero
and Rock Band were made by two different companies.
Yes, I know. Sorry, I meant I need to go back to a time where people had those games and many people had that accoutrement.
Got it.
You could also you're welcome to also use, like, the taiko drums, right? If you have that one. We had that one for a while. Any of the musical instrument supplementary controllers can be used for this. You can also play it with controllers, but it's not designed for that. And yeah, you're I don't know if I should maybe should do roommates. I don't know if there's a way to customize this for, like, what if you have 2 people playing or what if you have 4 people playing. Or maybe I should make an experience that is explicitly designed for 4 people, so it just is guaranteed to sell, like, 2 copies.
Yeah, I do think, like, while it's cool to try, like, co-op elements with different people, I think if you made a game designed for specifically 4 people, you should just not expect to make any money.
It could have online,
Still.
Yeah.
Feels like still.
That's fair. Okay then, so it's 2 people. Yeah, you're a heavy metal couple. But your other bandmates have disappeared in a supernatural accident. But the big battle of the bands that's going to allow you to... you live in, like, the Giver world, where your career assignments are determined, right, at, like, age 16. We'll take away the couple assigning elements, because that's a little...
Sure.
It's too complicated. But you do live in a world where your career elements or your career assignment is determined from above. And the big battle of the bands is coming up. And if you don't win, your right to be heavy metal rock stars will be revoked. And you'll have to be bums. I don't know.
Business suit people.
You'll have to work as high school teachers teaching kids to love music.
No. Or maybe it's like, you've already been assigned, you know, your jobs, and you start, like, you know, next week, but you want to use this, like, battle of the bands to show people that, you know, the true calling is heavy metal, or whatever.
Okay, so that's a good, third act, character development. Like, at first, the battle of the bands is an opportunity to prove the career board wrong. The career board is going to need a much doper name than that, but whatever.
The CB.
But then midway through you realize, wait a minute, there are a lot of people working jobs that they don't love, that they don't belong in, and we have to show people that the board is not brutal enough for this.
And then at the end, the board transforms into demons that you fight using the power of music.
Yeah. And so you navigate this world with different controllers, right? So ideally, you actually can play with up to 4. The other 2 are going to be, like, not real characters in the thing, but they can wield, like, the other instruments if you don't want to be doing the kind of frantic gameplay that I'm imagining for this. This is where the real-time strategy element comes in, because I think of real-time strategy as being very frantic. It's not a real-time strategy game, but for me it's like, someone's dying! That's how I sound when I play those games. Mm-hmm. So, you have all of the, like, band stuff. So it's like, there's the microphone, there's a guitar or 2, maybe there's drums. You can set it, so you can say, like, these are the ones I have, and it'll do the prompts. It'll, like, set you accordingly. But they do different types of attacks. You need them, they're like HMs, if we're doing, like, Pokemon speak. Like, you need them to navigate the world. Sometimes you have to, like, yell into the microphone, or do a sick riff on the guitar, or drum a little bit. Or use your controller to navigate the world. And so you're having to kind of coordinate of, like, sometimes you do things at the same time as your partner, and you have to, like, coordinate your sick riffs.
That sounds cool.
It would be kind of cool, but we can't do, nobody has those anymore. Can't do it anymore.
Well, you could make a controller option just for the really cool people who still have their, band controllers.
Yeah, we're like, it's coming out for PS5. Also, PS3.
Also the Wii?
Oh, you can use your dance pad too.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Basically, based on absolutely nothing about these games, I've been like, wouldn't it be cool if you had to have 20 different controllers to play this game and a partner that you love? So there it is, folks. Are you gonna be digging your old guitar controllers out of the closet to get ready for the release of Brütal Haven? Down with the career demons.
Oh man, the career demons.
Do you wish there was a game that was based on the album covers of your favorite musical genre? Do you wish there were more games targeted at different groups of people living together? Like, what's the game that's targeted at roommates that only sort of know each other? And why is it Mario Party? If you have any thoughts about any of those things or anything else we talked about on the show, if you want to send us hate mail about not doing Psychonauts again, you can hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the very up-to-date games that are in the hat that Emma's about to pull from right now, and read our blog, featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, where he does sometimes talk about metal and Kingdom Hearts, and Split Screen, where we're watching My Hero Academia and Coffee Prince. Next week on the show, I'm still hoping to do my, questions from Epic and Apple side quest. Hoping early in the week to gather those questions so we can think about them. But is Pele the banana naked? What does it mean for a banana to be naked? What does it mean for a game to be unspeakable? What is a video game? Is Roblox a game? All of those questions and more next week. But in 2 weeks, exciting. What are we talking about?
Our old game is going to be Viva Pinata.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, I kid you not. I think Viva Pinata might be Clickbait Boyfriend's favorite game.
I think I remember that, yeah.
That's probably in there because he suggested it. Great. He's gonna freak.
It ended up in my last, I had to replace 6 out of each list, so I don't remember where I remembered it from, but it's probably from that. And our new game is going to be Sakuna of Rice and Ruin.
That's a title if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, so look forward to that.
Look for some piñatas filled with rice and ruin next week, 2 weeks from now.
Careful which piñata you hit. You might get some rice or you might get some ruin.
Well, folks, that's our show. We'll see you next week for some side quest fun. Listeners, this week, I hope that you have a face-melting amount of fun playing games with your friends.